Mark, Infernals are broken and they're breaking the game.
Well, it's the only way I can win games, so let's keep it that way.
You're not wrong, but let's talk about it. Hey there, welcome back to another Shoulda Boosted number 27. I'm Brian, and with me is my co-host Mark. Mark, how's it going?
Well, the fact that I'm actually on the podcast I'm supposed to be a part of is pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. We got to get you here more often, you know?
Yeah. New job is a little busy, so it's good though.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm starting to get games in. You're starting to get games in. I think things are actually turning around.
Oh, buddy, don't jinx us. That's the last thing I need. Except for some jerk just canceled on my weekly game, so.
Well, luckily there's a lot of those extra jerks around. I'm sure you can find somebody.
Yeah, there's a handsomer jerk that just said he'll play this week, so it's okay.
Nice. So what we're going to be talking about today is really all about Infernals, but more so just really, are they the boogeyman that everyone says they are? Because people are going to start getting games again, and there are some hungry Infernal players out there ready to eat them up. And so really the topic of this episode here is going to be Infernals in general. Are they actually busted? Are they breaking the game and twisting it? And whether that answer comes up to being yes or no, what you, the listener, should be doing to actually be handling them and trying to not get mercilessly destroyed. So I guess just on the general premise and the idea before we get into any actual details, Mark, what are your thoughts of the internet saying that Infernals are busted and breaking the game?
Well, I think it's kind of like any other faction where you say that, oh, this is broken, it's too good, it's wrecking the game. And that's mostly the reaction from people saying, I can't beat this because I don't know how. So, like, for example, we had the same kind of problem with Clockatrice. Yeah, they were really freaking good, but once you figured them out, they weren't so bad.
Yeah, I think just Grimkin in general are a very good comparison where going into it, people are like losing all the time. They're so busted. They're so good. But it's really just, they're a new faction with new mechanics. And once people understood how those mechanics worked and stopped saying like walking into Arcana, then of course they start doing a lot better and things balance out. So maybe through this, as we're attacking the different pieces, those things will come up. So let's then just talk about the very first thing here, Essence and the way that it works. It's not really like Focus. It's a lot like Fury. And as long as us know, it's usually better to have Fury as like a war beast because you can then buy all the things you need. But what are your thoughts there? You know, the whole Essence system, is it broken? Is it busted?
I wouldn't say it's broken and busted, but I think it's pretty damn good. When you say that it's more like Fury, I don't necessarily agree because it's kind of a mix of the best of both worlds, to be honest. Because you allocate it like you would Focus, but you spend it like you would Fury. So it's kind of neat. It's a little different.
Yeah, you don't need to be within the range of the Infernal Master in order to spend the Essence, right? You can charge outside the control range and stuff.
That is correct.
So what about the idea that, like, let's imagine that you had a Hordes faction where, you have the normal ways that you're handing out Fury, but you have entire units that are out there giving out Fury as well, and you even have a solo that says one free Fury for everybody every single turn. Or I guess in this case, it's kind of like the reverse because you'd be having to minus it. But you know what I'm saying. That type of focus efficiency in Essence. So is that way broken?
I think it's pretty darn close, to be honest. It's like if every single army you played got the retribution, what are the mechanics? If you got all the units and you got all the solos, and you just kind of hand out Focus or whatever you want to call it that we're talking about, kind of whenever you want.
Mm. I mean, trying to throw things the other side to you. I mean, the motto talking there is like Arcanist, and you always see that, right? All Ret players will be taking like 3 Arcanists in every single list to hand out focus to all the Jacks. But you have to do that kind of twofold because you need to go and take these cultists, which are a little bit more expensive than an Arcanist, to not actually be handing these things out, but also to be sacrificed to your actual infernal master, because you don't just replenish every single turn, you have to sacrifice something to get it back. So these are points you're having to spend to make this efficient, and it's always a liability that if these things die, you're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, it gets a little risky when you start running out of cultists because with unlike a lot of the different resource management, when an infernal master has to cut for their essence or whatnot, I guess it is the same thing. That's 1 point per essence point, but when you need to sacrifice 1 point on each of your horrors or they go poof, it's a little taxing.
So let's even talk about that point there, because I mean, I think that's one of the things that's supposed to balance it. Like when the Fury system, if you don't go very carefully with your Fury, you're going to frenzy and go crazy and lose activations. Well, for Essence, if you go and spend everything, and you literally can't pay your tithe at the end of the turn, you just lose that horror, poof, as you put it, gone. Now, that seems really bad, but then there's a thing called the Hermit that just makes it so that you can't, I mean, you just get that one free on everyone, so that's almost like a non-issue. So how do you find that then?
Well, 9 times out of 10, the Hermit does save my butt. But there's that one time where, I don't know if you remember, but some of you listening might, at Attack X, when the Hermit kind of screwed me over because it wasn't my Hermit. Basically, what happened is I was playing against one of the local guys down in Red Deer, Newt, or Tyler, and he was playing Virus 2, and I sent in, I think it was 5 Tormentors to go kill Virus, but he had a Hermit in my way. And when you kill this pesky little Hermit, he removes all essence points within 8 inches of him. So I basically killed 5 of my own Tormentors to try and kill Virus 2.
You still won that game though, right?
I did, and it was pretty epic, but I think that's the closest I've ever been to shitting my own pants in a game.
So that might be already a point in Infernals being broken if you can randomly, mistakenly lose 5 heavies and still easily win the game.
Well, that's just because I have horseshoes crammed in my ass,
That's very true.
among other things.
So I guess, I mean, going with that though, and still want to finish this part with the essence. Do you find then that that actually balances out? That, I mean, since you have to really fuel this through having the Hermit and also having to have the cultists, do you feel that having to protect this kind of support group, or else that really falls apart? Is that really hurting you? Like, do you find that when you play against players that really target your cultists and really target your Hermit, that all of a sudden the essence system is too taxing for you?
Oh, for sure. You gotta play with your Hermit and your Cultist fairly conservatively, so it does hinder you quite a bit. So that you're definitely quite strong as a faction overall when you take all your little tools together. But they're very fragile in the way that if you start scalping out key pieces, I guess not even key pieces, but any of the support pieces, it starts to fall apart pretty quickly.
But how hard is that? Because I mean, like, I think a very good comparison is say like Menoth with their choir. So a big part of what they need to do is their choir, keeping their jacks safe from all spells and shooting, and then making them strong at the end. And I mean, you can always say, "Oh, we'll take a turn shooting the choir," but when they're back behind the jack wall, good luck. And so same thing with Infernals, where they can stay fairly far behind the main line. Who knows if you have shield guards? Who knows if you have Zadaroth reducing your range? I mean, do you actually find that you're in a lot of situations where you're like, wow, they're very vulnerable? Or is it one of these things where if you just play smart, you're not going to lose them?
Well, you're asking the wrong person about playing smart. But in theory, it's not that bad. But in practicality, it's a lot harder than you think. When you're playing against a smarter player, or, just a decent opponent in general, they're going to know that you have all these limitations and these limiting factors. So I know from personal experience, I usually have a whole crap load of cultists die to stupid things like electro leaps or me not knowing my opponent's rules like Nemo 4. But drifting AoEs is pretty scary.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, another part would say like things like a void archon, right, where they just charge in, they teleport to the back and like spray down an entire unit type thing. Like that's a big thing you have to worry about.
Yeah, those Void Archons are kind of dicks. I'm not gonna lie.
And I think the same thing for the hermit. Whereas, I mean, that's a key piece in your army. But I feel that more and more people are taking things to take out the hermit. Whether it's something like Scythe, where it has lots of different shots, you can get through those 6 hits you basically need to take out the hermit, or something that does an auto 3 points like Iris or Kel Baylock. Are you starting to see more things in there that are threatening your hermit as well?
In all honesty, I'm not, which I'm super surprised about. One of the ones that actually scares me the most is the stupid Baron from Grimkin, because he can just eat my hermit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've
Got that
actually seen the
consumed.
hermit used more defensively than offensively so far, where they'll go up, they'll use their own hermit to bring down the armor in a bubble, and then they'll use their own little frog guy to eat their own hermit so it's no longer hurting them. But yeah, in theory, that should
Yeah.
work.
So that's the thing you have to watch out for with Infernals, because you have basically the two sides of the faction's coin. You've got your Hearts of Darkness list and your um, whatever the heck the other one's called. I play the faction, don't even know what the theme's called.
It's the
But
other one. I think you give it the right name.
the good Dark Legacy. That's the one. Um, so with Hearts of Darkness, you're going to use the Hermit more offensively because you have nothing to give essence to. So he's basically just an armor buff. But when Dark Legacy, it's the complete opposite. You're trying to protect him. You're trying to use him as an essence bot, essentially.
And I
Yeah.
guess switching over to that offensive hermit idea, you already talked about how devastating it is that if the hermit dies, you lose essence on everything within its command, which is just super, super, just like you just lose heavies. You lost 5 heavies in that one game. But are you
It's so
seeing
bad.
that? Because I think that's what Privateer Press did with their plan to be anti-infernals, is that they can have this hermit. You can take in literally every faction, run it into the middle of the enemy, and not only can it contest, but it can stand in front of a heavy to, body block or whatever. And if they ever kill it, boom, it's going to just screw you over. So are you finding that people are actually doing that against you, taking their hermits, even taking hermits in the first place, and then if they do take them, just aggressively running them into your face?
Oh yeah, 100%. I've had numerous amount of opponents do that already because they know that I have to deal with it. Because even if I don't kill it, they can still use that hermit's ability and start removing my essence just one by one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it does that in reverse as well. You're right.
Yeah, you don't see it happen a lot, but it does suck.
So what about, there's one other piece that actually has specific anti-infernal tech, which is the Thamorite Advocate. Again, this is a model that basically was just coming out as we got into lockdown. But I mean, that one has Bar the Gate, so that when you're summoning, it's going to be more expensive. And I believe when she dies, she does bad things too. I might have to look this one up. But how about that? Are you starting to see people using that against you?
Well, I'm kind of lucky, so it only came out just shortly before this whole COVID quarantine BS. So I can't say I've seen it on the table yet, but I know there's a certain gentleman whose name rhymes with Borden Murphy that has a couple of them waiting for me.
And I think a big thing there too is, I mean, like, whereas the hermit, you can literally take a hermit in every single faction. That one there will just be in the flames and the darkness type one, but it's still another one for you to be worried about.
Yeah, but nobody plays Flames in the Darkness. I'm fine, right?
We'll see. We'll see. Everyone
Right.
coming out of this lockdown is saying, "Oh, I'm going to start a new faction." So for all I know, we'll be 100% minions walking out of this.
Well, did you know that the Thamorite Archons actually work for Circle?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're a minion model, and they only work for Circle for Hordes. I'm not sure why, but they do.
All right. Well, we'll see if that shows up at all.
Yeah,
So I
maybe.
think the next piece to talk on, as we talked about essence in depth, the next one is summoning. And I mean, if you talk to Joe Internet saying like doom and gloom, I mean, you're basically taking your little cheap solo and turning it into a heavy. So there is a cost for that. You are having to pay essence to make this happen. But how in the world can this be seen as not something that's broken and crazy if you can end the game with like 50 more points than you started?
It's so dumb. like, but in a good way. I absolutely love it, and I think it's one of the most broken things this game's ever come out with.
Oh, so are you actually saying that you're on the side that this is broken and too good?
Unfortunately, yeah, that is one of the things that I'll definitely agree that summoning is absolutely ridiculous, and the fact that it is ridiculous now says something because during the CID, when this is all being figured out and what the heck's going to happen, it was 1,000 times stronger.
Oh, yeah.
So for you guys that don't know what it was, is basically when you summon something, that summoned model still got its full activation. So I could come up, summon, say, a tormentor, and then charge you with said tormentor. Like, it was dumb.
Yeah, I'm really happy that didn't stay because I think the game would just be dead if they kept that.
Yeah, Travis, bring it back.
No, don't. But I mean, I guess more to try and take the other side here, the way that I try and balance this in my head is I think that whenever you're playing against Infernals, you just have to play differently. So normally, if you're playing, you're playing chess, you're trying to trade up your pawns to take out their more important pieces. But when you're playing against Infernals, you need to be aggressive. You need to get in there. Because if you both sit around doing nothing and wait till turn 7, the Infernal player is going to have 7 more heavies and will just be way ahead of you. So you need to get in there. And I think one of the funniest things is that if you can kill a solo, that's as good as killing a heavy. So if I'm going in there with my own Thamurite Advocate, I could shoot a Tormentor and do a little pittance of damage, but if I can shoot a solo and kill it, it's basically like killing a heavy. And the sooner that I can kill off all your solos, not only does it mean that it's going to take away your ability to summon, but I mean, those solos were good to begin with because you have some pretty awesome solos. And then on top of that, obviously like things like flags are harder. So what do you think about that?
No, you're 100% right. You have to value a 4-point solo just as much, if not more, than an entire heavy because, like you said, this 4-point solo turns into a 14-point heavy or a 12-point heavy. And each of these solos has a job in the army other than just summoning something else, you know?
Yeah, like Orin, right? I mean, Orin, you can go in there and you can turn to a heavy whenever you want, but Orin has other things that he wants to be doing too.
Or a Valen Hawk or a Wretch or literally every single model.
I remember an interesting game was playing against, I believe it was you, where you had, I think, 3 wretches, and I was using McBain, and you were in the interesting situation where you're like, okay, my wretches would go and just counter McBain's feat. However, if I summon not on them, what am I summoning on? All of a sudden, am I going to get rid of my Hermit? Are you going to go and get rid of your Valen Hawk?
See, that's the thing. I think the only model in the entire faction that's worth summoning just to use for summoning is probably Saxon Auric.
Mm-hmm. And so I think, do you agree, though, that that's the way you have to play against Infernals? Is that you have to be aggressive and try and hit into them as soon as possible?
100%. Like, if you can get the alpha before they have a chance to bolster their forces and bring out all these big, scary monsters, then you're probably doing pretty good.
And I think it's also fair to say that you need to have a strong ranged element because that's how you're going to have to try and kill these cultists, to kill these, the hermits, to try and kill these solos.
I don't think it necessarily has to be a strong ranged element. You definitely need something that threatens your opponent's backfield, like an ambusher or super fast ninja assassin like Kayazi's, something like that. But there's a lot of mitigating factors when you consider the range element, like you have, like you said earlier, with Zadaroth and her Shadow's ability, or if most of your opponents bring Umbral Guardians, that's 2 shield guards per model, right?
Mm-hmm. So and I think even like some of these spells that normally you'd be saying like, this is the shitty nuke, this is the crappy, arcane bolt. When all of a sudden you're shooting that crappy nuke and it's killing off cultists, or it's going and it's killing a solo, well, you got to realize that means that there's going to be X less essence that they can allocate, and as well, there's going to be that fewer heavies coming.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, given all we said here, though, you're still in the camp that this is actually too good, and then actually for the good of the game that they should probably think about drawing this back, or is there actually a balance there?
There is definitely a balance. It's not easy to see right off the bat from looking at the faction or looking uh, as playing against the faction, but there is definitely a clause, if you will.
Yeah, and I know like another thing for the solos, like just how we said, like, okay, what you want to do is kill the cultist and kill the hermit, but they'll be hiding in the back. I've kind of found that when you play against good Infernal players, they're also keeping their solos very far back and very guarded before they're going to run up and then be actually used. But I mean, I think a big thing again is that that has a cost to it because if you're going to be keeping these solos so far back that they're out of danger, well, then you're not really using them and you're not getting the value out of them as solos anyway.
You say good Infernal players? Are you and Jordan playing behind my back?
You know, you have no idea what I'm building up here.
I don't even want to know.
All right, so we talked about essence. We said, okay, that's probably fair-ish. We talked about summoning. It might be a little bit too good, but if you get in there aggressively, you can counter the effects. Let's actually talk about the actual models themselves and about whether they're over the curve. So let's talk about like the 3 Infernal Masters. Compared to other warlocks and casters, are they actually like significantly over the curve?
I think, in all honesty, I think they are. When you take a look at one of the 3 masters, probably the most overpowered overall, which is Agathon, I think he's probably one of the best quote unquote casters in the game.
Do you want to say why?
Well, if you think how scary back in the day that Denegra 2 was, uh, take that fear factor, if you will, and borderline double it. Because just with that little bit of a boost in Essence, because he's Essence 9, and he can cast spells for free, he's absolutely terrifying. He could literally do anything on the table he wants.
So, okay, he has Essence 9, but is he actually, say, above the curve from, say, like, from the assassination potential of a Sloan or from the control of the board of a Haley 2?
See, in that question there, it's kind of a loaded question because if you're taking straight assassination, no, I don't think he's better than these casters. But the fact that he can do anything, he can do the assassination, he can play the attrition game, he can play the scenario game, all at the same time while having your opponent worry about that threat of an assassination. I think it makes him exponentially scarier.
Now, I think a big part here, though, is that knowledge, because I think if you're someone who doesn't realize what's going on your first turn, you might cast all your spells, charge up, be camping none or one, and then that's when a Forebodar runs up and you're just killed. Is this one of those things like with the Grimkin Arcana, where once you know how Agathon works, you're not going to be assassinated by it anymore?
I honestly think so. Actually, a good example of that is this past week I had a game with a local player and a buddy of ours that's seen regularly, almost more regularly than I have been on our podcast. Ian there, the community killer, as he likes to call himself. You're welcome for that, Ian. He was running, was it Viros 2 with a Void Archon, and he sacrificed his own Void Archon to kill both Arc Nodes with Agathon, just so I don't have that assassination threat. And if I want to cast anything, Agathon's going to stand there with his junk in his hand, basically.
So do you think then, with that knowledge, that is Agathon actually like an S tier in the game, that, or maybe the other casters as well, that they're just that much above the grade?
No, I still think he definitely is still an S tier because whether it's a smart idea or not, you can always just summon another Forebodar. You're not really trading up, but the utility of that little 4-point arc node with Agathon is just terrifying.
So the one that I was actually looking at, I guess more so just from the numbers, not from how we were playing them, is just, the usual thing where a caster is supposed to be, between the defense and armor, a total of about 30. They'll have 16-ish boxes. But if you look at like Omedeus, he's a 14, 18, already above the curve. That's not even talking about locked horns. And then, of course, he has 19 boxes as well. So is that another one where it just seems like, this is just a monster that any other faction would love to have?
Yeah, I would definitely say it is, to be honest. Omo is hands hands or claws or whatever you want to say, down my favorite of the three. I think that he is an absolute monster. And yeah, I think a lot of other factions would die to have a borderline Karchev in their faction.
So the way that I see it, and maybe then I don't know if you agree or not, is that basically if you were to say for any other faction, Kador, Krix, Signar, if you just took the best three casters and got rid of everything else, that's basically what you have here, right? It's not like Crucible Guard where you have one good caster and a couple of not really great ones. All three were banger great casters. So if you look at the best three of say like Krix and Infernals isn't better. There's just no bad ones in there. Would you agree with that?
100% agree. 200% agree.
Awesome, we got there. Next step down then would be the actual horrors themselves. You know, if you're trying to compare them to other, whether we want to compare them to War Beast or Jax or whatever it is, you know, not only is the part where you could be talking about where you're summoning these in for free, but just for the points, are they kind of above the curve?
I would definitely think they are. When you compare, like, take the Tormentor specifically, the Tormentor is 12 points. For something that basically uses Fury, what do you get for 12 points? I know in Legion you get an Aerith, and I'd say a Tormentor is 1,000% scarier than an Aerith. Mm-hmm. What else is 12 points? Ironclad, I think, is 12.
Ironclad is, the Nomad is.
Yeah, I would definitely take a Tormentor over any of them. So I think for what his cost is, I think it's pretty good for 12 points.
Yeah, like, and I think another thing there to look at is like something, say, like the a Hammersmith. I think is an interesting comparison because, okay, the Hammersmith is 11 points. Oh, sorry, 12 points as well. They're both exactly the same. They're both speed 5. They're both mat 7. They're both POW 17. The big difference here between them is that, well, one can get 3 focus, the other one gets 4 essence, which you can be pretty much allocating for free with all these other support pieces. And as long as you haven't lost your outer ring, you're also charging for free. So the damage output on top of things of, say, like, oh, I have counter charge and stuff like that. You know, their armor's both 19, their defense is both 11. I think they're very, very comparable. And then there's even extras on there, like the crushing claws have open hands and magical. So it's just like over and over and over. So the only real negative is that there's more boxes on the Hammersmith that the Tormentor doesn't have. But do you actually find that, you know, that fewer boxes is a real balance to the output that it has?
Yeah. See, that's where the little caveat I was trying to say there earlier is with the Infernal Horrors is, yeah, they're super good, and yeah, they are pretty beefy. But once they take a hit, they go down hard.
Well, even with that, what would you say about going down hard? Because, I mean, if you're a Jack and you lose a system, it is devastating, depending, right? If you lose your Cortex, if you lose your primary weapon arm, if you're in hordes, maybe it's not as a big of a deal, but I mean, like, if you lose your spirit, it's a big deal, and you have to, like, heal it first. If you're a Tormentor and you lose your outer ring, you just don't charge and run for free. You're still fully operational.
True, but with that, you have to think you do have to spend that extra essence. So their damage output's going down significantly because they can't sit on that one extra point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. And then when you do lose that outer ring, 9 times out of 10 is generally pretty hard to heal them back up. Because with Infernal Horrors, they have to heal from the inside ring out. So it's 1 or 2 points usually doesn't really bring back his outer ring.
Yeah, that's a great point, that normally if you were to lose your spirit, you heal 1 and then you're all good to go. But for the Tormentor or any other horror, you have to heal all the way back to wherever that last ring is. But do you even find that's ever needed? Like, do you ever find yourself in a spot where, like, oh boy, because of order of activations, I really need to heal this horror before it goes in?
It comes up a lot more than you think, but it definitely sucks.
I guess if we're trying to teach people how to be dealing with infernals, what is the real thing here then, since you can't really be crippling systems or anything like that, is the real answer here? I mean, first of all, probably take out the support if you can, because killing a solo is like killing a heavy. But if you are going after heavies, you have to focus fire and destroy that heavy completely. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely 100%. If you, especially if you're a living faction as your main combat force, because they do have snacking. Don't forget.
Just
I don't
another
like
little
this
extra bonus
episode
thrown on
anymore.
there. So I guess with what we're saying there, I mean, you have to be aggressive. You have to go against that heavy. But I mean, even saying getting back to the same premise, are these heavies above the curve so much so that it's above the negatives of what's holding it back?
I think that when you take them for what they are on their own, no, I don't think they're above the curve. But when you, like any other faction, when you stack everything that you can with them, I think it makes them pretty bonkers.
I think it's something else we should quickly touch on as well is the fact that we're probably talking about the best heavy in the faction. So, what about when we start looking at the others? You know, when we start looking at the Soul Stalker, or any of the other ones, the Lamenter. Or how are the other heavies, the other lights?
So the other heavies, the Soul Stalker is kind of lackluster in general. I do say that with a bit of reserve because I'm slightly special when it comes to it. I've been playing Infernal since, well, before they released, right? And I just recently realized that the Soul Stalker has a 4-inch bubble around it where it collects souls and not just things it kills. So that's kind of cool. But other than that, they're good. They have decent damage output. They're 1 point more than your Tormentors. So that kind of stinks. But they're faster, so that's good because Tormentors are slow AF. Even though you have countercharge, if a smart opponent won't give it to you.
But collecting souls for your Infernal Master is pretty important.
It's pretty good. It's definitely pretty good. But the thing that kind of stinks is armor 16. So when they get hit, like I said, they go down fast.
So the other main heavy there is the Desolator. That was the name I couldn't think of in my mind. And let's just say if we're turning you into a traitor, so you're going to be telling the opponent now that if you're facing a list that has a Tormentor and a Desolator, or two Tormentors and a Desolator, what would you focus fire on first, the Desolator or one of the Tormentors?
Honestly, 100% your Desolator. Your Desolator, it's your main source of debuff for armor, really. It's got the same durability as a Tormentor, same boxes, same def, same armor, but it has those sprays, and that's what makes, like I said, the Tormentor on their own, they're really good, but they're not insanely bonkers. They're only power 17. But with a Desolator around, that's two outlets for an armor debuff just all the time. So that brings everything else up that much more.
And I did actually say a silly thing there. I said, what if they had like two Desolators? But that's never going to happen, right? Nobody's going to take a single Desolator in their list. That's just going to be their first summon.
Right, yeah. I don't think paying for a Desolator is ever a good idea. Unless that's all that you're taking is just like two Desolators. But
Yeah.
you probably shouldn't do that.
And I think, like if it had a thing where it debuffed one target, that wouldn't be a big thing. But when it can go in there and spray over three of your heavies before the Tormentors go in, it's very important. Not to mention just like spraying down your infantry. So, I mean, I was wanting to confirm with you, but that's what I found, that if you have a choice, take out the Desolator first.
I agree. Unfortunately.
How about, so I mean, obviously if you're up against Agathon, kill those foreboders whenever you can. But how about the lights? What do you see your priorities or like the weaknesses there?
So again, the weakness for Infernals is the majority of the faction is super squishy. The lights, there's only two. There's the Shrieker, and then there's the Lamenter, like you were saying earlier. They both serve completely different purposes. But I think that the Shriekers are the ones you have to watch out for the most, just because they have an amazing gun. So it's a range 10, power 13 gun, but it has a Demolisher on it, so it jumps around. So it's great for picking off support. The thing that a lot of people forget is they do have Wailing. So I know one of the things I like to do is just run the little buggers straight into my opponent's face and say, well, now you can't do a lot of stuff.
Not to mention, you might just run up there and then the wretches will make them an ancillary attack. And yeah,
Yep, I can't say I haven't done that before.
they're definitely the sneaky ones. Like the Lamenters, they're pretty straightforward. You know what they're going to do. But yeah, definitely those Shriekers. It seems like every time I face them, there's something else sneaky they're learning how to do.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, so the just to try and wrap this one up in a bow, we kind of said that the right thing to do is to try and take out the Desolator first and focus your fire, take out the one heavy. You can't really spread around and try and cripple several at the same time. Would you say there's any other general weaknesses or tips that people should be trying to use to try and, stop the influx of the dominance of Infernals?
Weapon masters are scary. With Infernals, you can deal with a lot of high armor. You can deal with a lot of troops, but you can't deal with a lot of troops that hit like a truck.
But I mean, it's not like there's a bunch of people out there with like Legion of Lost Souls or something.
Or Legion of Lost Souls, Doom Reavers, Dawnguard Sentinels, Bane Thralls. Well, Bane anything because it's Grix and you have 12,000 debuffs. Yeah, there's a few things out there, just a few.
Yeah, and I think that's another way that we can talk about that. That's the way you should be playing against Infernals is that you can't go into it with like my Striker Zilla list with like 3 Colossals. You're just going to get destroyed because, like you said, they're really good at killing infantry and they're really good at killing heavies, but they don't like being hit back and they're going to start falling down if there's something like the very simple weapon master, if there's any debuffs in there, if you start getting those hermits and things, and especially because you can't really kill that hermit, right? That hermit's free to go in your lines and either steal away your essence or be dropping all your armor.
What are you talking about, Brian? That Striker Zilla list works perfect into me.
Yeah, right. I guess the next thing, let's talk about the solos. So, I mean, there's lots of them. Obviously, they're great for a lot of reasons, but maybe we'll just quickly jump to the trader portion of this section. That let's say you're facing an Infernal player that's crazy and took every single solo. What one should they be trying to get rid of first?
Well, in that case, usually it's the Hermit. He's kind of got the biggest target on his head.
Okay, yeah. So the first thing you can do, try and get rid of that hermit because it's a summon target. It can also feed you and all that stuff. What'd be the one after that?
So after the Hermit in priority, personally, I would say it's kind of a toss-up. It's depending on how the army's built, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to want to prioritize the Princess Regna or Regina or however she's called, because she's so clutch and detrimental to your lists. She gives you a free light, and then she's kind of sitting in the background just casting decel. So I think that's pretty huge.
And then when she stops being useful, you just turn into a heavy.
That's exactly it.
All right. How about number 3? What's the third best? Would you say?
Number 3 is the one that I was kind of torn on there for quite some time, and it's the little Mister Elaine or Alan Runewood. Not the first one, but the second one, because he does a lot of stuff, and the opponent generally doesn't like losing Pathfinder or basically having admonition on a stick.
Yeah, it's really weird to have that where, I mean, like we've seen curses before where like something comes up and says like, oh, you're -2 armor or something like that. But he's very interesting in all the negative effects he can actually be putting on the enemy.
Yeah, he's a little different.
I mean, I guess one of the things with him, though, is you might not ever have a real chance because he's probably going to go up, use his ability, and then get immediately turned into a horror.
That's with Runewood, not really. I tend to keep him sticking around for a little while because he does have that longevity.
Okay. One of the ones I kind of thought you were going to say that you didn't, so I'm wondering why, is Lord Roget de Viros, or whatever his name is, where you basically get to summon something for free. So, I mean, normally you have to pay the essence for whatever the cost is, but for him, he just turns into that heavy and there's nothing to pay. Why did you not have that higher in your list?
Because I'm dumb.
Well, not necessarily. Maybe I'm missing something.
Well, no. I tend to keep him... Not, or shouldn't say I keep him. I tend to sacrifice him a little too early. It is amazing having that summon for free. Generally, I sacrifice him on my feet turn when I want to be doing 8, 9, 10 different things. But depending on the caster, having that spell slave or just that harmonious exaltation is huge in the long run. You almost want to save him till almost last when you're running out of resources.
Yeah, I think one of the things I was maybe thinking about here is that there's just so many good solos in Infernals, and that you're probably going to be taking lots of them because it's a smart thing to do, and there's always going to be something that's going to be clutch in that given matchup. But one of the things I was wondering which way you would lead on this is, would you A, look at the solos that are biggest in that matchup and try and target them first, knowing that they're probably going to be the most heavily protected? Or do you just target whatever solo you can, knowing that if, like we were talking about, if you kill the easiest solos, if they want to summon, they're going to have to try and sacrifice something like the Hermit or something they don't want to sacrifice?
There's definitely certain solos, like we're saying, that you should prioritize. But in all honesty, if you can take out any solo, do it.
All right. Just kill them all. That's always the best way to do it.
That's right. And I really don't like this episode anymore. I'm going to lose so many more games.
Well, you know, sometimes it's all about the group coming together so that we can learn how to beat each other. How many times have I, on the Mandalorian channel, taught people how to beat me?
Well, you're not wrong. You've done it once or twice.
We got a couple more sections. So the next one's just the simple battle engine. So the gate. So we got our good old structure for 12 points. How do you think that matches up compared to like other structures from other factions?
In all honesty, I think it's the best in the game. I don't think the Blockhouse can come anywhere close. The Menoth Church Majig can come anywhere close. And I don't know what else there is.
Yeah, I don't know if there actually is. You were listing them off. I was like, oh, there's the well. You know, that's another one that's pretty good.
The well's pretty darn good. I still think it's better than the well, but when you got to think about the well is effectively 5 points.
Yeah. So how critical is the gate to the Infernal strategy? You know, if I have a choice of either killing the gate or a tormentor, which one should I be doing?
In all honesty, that gate is generally the first thing that my opponents kill, and I don't say it's a bad choice. It's when you're playing something like Omodamos, you don't have a lot of threat, and that gate gives you that little bit extra just to scare your opponent. So it definitely neuters the army quite a bit. One thing a lot of people forget is that when that gate dies, you're actually paying more to summon your horrors.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a big thing that a lot of people forget. So definitely kill that gate.
So maybe there's a good way to put this just to make sure that we're 100% clear. If the gate had a rule that was like sacrificial pawn tormentor, where instead of the Infernal Gate dying, it would kill off one of your tormentors, is that something you would do? You know, turn 2, they charge in, they would have killed the gate with your last attack, and you're like, no, you're going to kill a tormentor instead. Is that actually what you would do?
I would 100%.
Okay, so then it's absolutely the best thing to go after.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so good news, good news. Last thing we have here, and there's not many of them in here, so this should be easy, is just the actual units. So we talked about the Keltis and how, you know, they're pretty weak and they're pretty important, so kill them if you can. But then we also have things like the Griever Swarms and Howlers. You know, how do you see these? Are they above the curve compared to other factions?
I don't think that the Griever Swarm are. I think they're costed pretty well. They're basically the Grimkin version of the Hollowmen. They're cheap. They're quite a bit faster than everything else, and they have flight. So that's where they shine, in my opinion. But I think they're fairly comparable to your average PopCap gun lines.
Yeah, they don't seem anything super special to me for sure. I mean, it's nice that they have magical shots and all that, but otherwise, they didn't seem above the curve to me. How about Howlers?
Howlers I love. Howlers, they don't hit very hard, but they take a beating pretty good. They're armor 17 base, so that's pretty good. If you run something like Almadamos, which I can't say I've done personally, but you can bring them up to 19. They all have 8 boxes, but they have Grievous Wounds, and they have Berserk. They're kind of like giant Doom Reavers, if you think of it that way.
I suppose, yeah.
But they don't hit as hard. So they're real good, but they definitely have their downfalls. So I think they're probably on par with a lot of the elite infantry in the game, but I think they're they're worse in general than a lot of the heavy infantry.
Yeah, I don't really look at the units of Infernals and be like, oh, wow, that's where they're broken. It's more so in the heavies and the summoning and stuff like that. So I'm definitely not seeing that here. Agree?
I agree.
So we've kind of
You're,
covered everything here. Was there anything that I missed? Or like, you know what, we didn't talk about this. This is a real strength or it's a real weakness.
no, I actually think we kind of nailed down their head there, buddy.
So I think all the things that we said in general that are the negatives holding it back is that you want to try and kill off those cultists, kill off the hermit as soon as you can so that essence is not as efficient as possible. Kill off the solos because killing a solo is like killing off a heavy. And once you kill off whatever solos you can, they have to start sacrificing their good solos. And that if you have the choice, kill the gate before you kill a heavy. And also as well, we said be as aggressive as you can because if you just hold back and try and peace trade until turn 7, that's what Infernals want. And that's what they're actually going to win. So out of all those things I said there, what would you say was like the golden rule? What's the number one thing that a player would have to keep in mind for playing against Infernals?
Well, I think that the technical term is pop a cap in the solo's ass.
The killing the solos one is the big one, eh?
Yeah, you got to make it all politically correct, don't you?
Buddy, this is your podcast. You can make this whatever you want.
Well, that's why I said pop a cap in the solo's asses.
Perfect. I think otherwise that's what we got here for this episode. Mark, was there anything else that you want to chat about?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I like to point out there that Nathan sucks, but that's about it.
Oh, he is the worst.
Well, it's just me being bitter for him crying about not playing.
I think the really good news, though, is that, like we said, we're starting to get some of those cautious games in type thing. And so I think maybe already by next week, we can already start talking about what the new meta is looking to turn into. But either way, it's great to see the horizon coming up here and, you know, actually playing real games, not me being stuck doing solo games or having to look at Vassal or anything like that.
Don't get me started on you and your solo games, Brian.
Hey, man, they're important. I've learned things.
Yeah, you learn things by playing with yourself?
All the time.
Go.
All right, so for all you listening, just remember we have a Facebook page. We swear we update it sometimes. I also can be found on the Mr. Malorian page or YouTube channel. Thank you again for listening. And otherwise, I guess we'll catch you later.
See ya.